Okay, let's talk defining moments in my birth experiences. I wanted to share my birth stories because I very much believe in the power of sharing positive birth stories so that you can kind of see yourself in someone else's shoes and say, hey, if she did it, I can totally do this. And so that you know what to expect. I will never forget reading in Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, someone describing going through transition as feeling like her body was being ripped in half. Yes, violent and scary, I know. But I thought, okay, so if I, especially going into my first time giving birth, if I have this sensation all of a sudden that my body is being ripped in half, it's actually not uncommon and actually kind of a good thing because it means I'm near the end. Do you know what I'm saying? So I was going to share each of my birth stories, but I realized that I'd rather just share kind of defining moments of each one. So if you don't know, I have given birth 3 times at this point. Each experience has been very different and definitely positive, but I will say one was considerably harder than the others. And I honestly think it was because of my mindset. So, there's a strong, huge, powerful connection between mind and body. And so I really encourage you to get your mind in the right place and your body will follow. Your body can only be right here, right now, but your mind can be a million miles away. So use that to your advantage. Tell your body where you want it to go by harnessing the power of the mind. So, in my first birth experience, well, even before I gave birth, I was visiting a friend who had just given birth. I remember coming in and she was like, he's 21 days old. And I don't know why I always remember that. We brought them lasagna and salad, I think. And she was telling me about her birth experience. And she said she had been doing this research about pain-free birth. And I was like, that doesn't sound like a real thing. And she had candles and music or whatever. She had all of the things for a quote unquote positive birth experience, which, spoiler alert, I really believe you can have a positive birth experience no matter how medicalized your birth is and no matter how many candles you have lit. It's not about the candles, although that might be part of the atmosphere, sure. But that's not necessarily the secret to a positive birth experience. It's all about your mind. So anyway, she was preparing for an unmedicated vaginal birth and for whatever reason ended up with a C-section, possibly an emergency C-section. But what happened before the C-section is that at some point she said to her birth team, she was in a hospital, she said, I feel like I need to push. And they said, no, it's not time yet. Don't push. Don't push. And I will never forget her telling me that. I hadn't given birth yet. I hadn't felt what it felt like to push a baby out yet. But it just didn't sit well with me. Listen, I'm not a doctor, okay? Maybe there is some very specific medical reason why she was not supposed to push. But in my experience of working with moms, of hearing tons of birth stories, of having gone through it 3 times myself, I really feel like if your body is telling you to push, it is time to push, right? Anyway, so I had this kind of looming over me of this thought of someone's going to tell me it's not time to push. And that's like telling someone, don't sneeze. You can only say, white rabbit so many times. Isn't that a thing, or is that for smoke in your eyes when you're camping? Anyway, so fast forward to my first birth experience. It was my first, so no one knew how long it was going to take. So we called the midwife and she was like, okay, keep me up to date, whatever. And long story short, she got there an hour before my baby was born because none of us realized how quickly it was progressing. And quickly, I mean, it was 9 hours total. It wasn't 45 minutes. That is alarmingly fast. So she walks in. I am pretty much almost to transition. I am right toward the end. And I'm standing in the bathroom, holding onto the bathroom counter, kind of going back and forth, kind of riding the waves. And she comes in my groggy state. I kind of look at her and I'm like, you're not going to make me lay down, are you? Because I'm imagining she's going to do a cervical check. And she was like, I mean, if you don't want to, I won't. And another spoiler alert, 3 births, I've never had 1 cervical check ever. Because, again, I'm not a medical professional, but in my understanding, they're not actually that helpful most of the time. So anyway, I'm like, you're not gonna make me lay down, are you? And she was like, no, you don't have to. So, okay, great. And this is also, it was interesting. I've given birth with the same midwife 3 times at this point, and each of these steps in my story were pivotal moments in building trust with my team. Not that you have to give birth 3 times to build trust with someone, but apparently I do. But it really showed me the kind of provider that she was and how she trusted in the autonomy of my body. So wait, there's more. So then I'm progressing in labor, whatever, and I kind of all of a sudden like almost panicked. I'm like, I feel like I need to push. And it was like this weird thing because I had never pushed before, and yet I knew. Like, it is just this wild thing that all of a sudden that is what that sensation is. Incredible. I could just like pause here and like meditate on the fact that our bodies are so intuitive. Anyway, so I say, I feel like I need to push. And I'm thinking again of my friend whose care team told her it's not time yet. So I think that was part of my panic of being like, oh no, what are they going to say? What's my midwife going to say? And I said, I feel like I need to push. And she looked at me and very calmly said, okay, so push. And I responded, are you crazy? You haven't checked me yet. And I'm pretty sure she said something like, I mean, I can check if you want, but I think you're good to go. And so I pushed, and I think maybe 3 minutes later, my baby came out. I've never pushed for more than 5 minutes. But it was, again, just this wild experience of being like, my body's trying to tell me something. Are we all okay with that? And she was like, yeah, that's kind of the point. So if you feel like you need to push, it's probably time to push. But really, the moral of the story is make sure that you have care providers that believe and trust in your body's natural processes.